I cannot get the best value out of my AI because the data isn't talking to each other.
And that's going to really evolve how we actually even Google search.
Future is already here, but it's not evenly distributed.
Let's get started. Welcome to Grey Matter in Code, brought to you by the Business Technology Club at Schulich. Grey Matter in Code is a platform and a podcast designed to spark open conversations with thought leaders across industries and markets, people driving change and shaping what's next through the decisions they're making today. We're excited to kick things off with our very first guest, Noureen Syed. Noureen is a partner at IBM Consulting, where she leads teams helping Canadian organizations harness the power of data and AI, automation, and emerging technologies like blockchain and quantum to drive innovation and efficiency. Before IBM, she held impactful roles at Microsoft Canada, focusing on cloud strategy and customer-centric digital transformation. A computer engineer from the University of Waterloo, Noureen is also a proud mom, avid traveler, and a fitness enthusiast. Noureen, welcome to the show. It's a pleasure to have you here.
Thank you for having me, Mahmood.
Yep, and I did notice the weather was quite windy outside. I did see a few flurries on the way, so thank you so much for braving the weather and joining us today.
No problem. It's Canada, April, what else can you expect?
Yeah. Canada's weather is always unpredictable, right?
Agreed.
All right, let's dive into it. Maybe for our listeners, can you tell us a little bit more about yourself and what you do in your current role at IBM?
Sounds good. As you mentioned, the journey kind of started as a computer engineer at University of Waterloo. And then after that, you could say grew up at Microsoft Canada and had a variety of different roles there. I kind of growing up and doing my internships, I didn't want to just sit behind a screen and do coding.
Right.
So I switched over to, and what I realized is actually like doing this, getting out and talking to people, but still being in touch with the technology. Yeah. So I wanted to find a role that was a blend of business and tech together. Mm-hmm. It so happens the tech sector has a lot of those in marketing, strategy, relationship roles, client-facing roles. And so those are sort of the combination of roles that I did. Up until I kind of went into business strategy and compete strategy at Microsoft as my second last role. And then I really started missing the clients. So I kind of came back out and started managing a team of architects that were data and AI architects. Now this is, call it like 2019, 2020. Mm-hmm. So just sort of the... cloud's picking up and data and AI is kind of doing its thing. So it's a pretty exciting time. That's how I started kind of pivoting more into data and AI. And then IBM kind of came knocking and said, hey, look, we're growing our Microsoft practice and strategic partnership as well. Yeah. Why don't you come over and lead a practice team? And so it felt like a nice opportunity to go from a company that sells a lot of the solution technology, Lego blocks, if you will, but now get a chance to get even more deeply ingrained with clients, right? Continue that client-facing journey, see starts and go lives and project deliveries and all the fun that comes with the project delivery, which sometimes is not fun. Yeah. Right? And get a chance to do that. So that's what got me to where I have been the last 2 years.
Wow, quite a journey. And you did mention about you were excited to work with clients and organizations. Let's take that as a starting point and build on that. In your conversations with organizations, what trends have you been observing lately? And are businesses now coming to you with particular challenges now more than ever as they scale up their digital and AI capabilities?
Yeah, I think there's a couple of combination things that we could start outside in even before we talk about the clients and businesses, right? There's the macroeconomic client. I think the only constant has been years of uncertainty. Yeah. Whether, everybody kind of keeps joking around that life before 2019 or 2020. So there was COVID, and then post-COVID, there's been sort of rising interest rates that are going on. Now we might be at trade wars, right? Yeah. There's a lot of uncertainty. So I would say just like, there's been sort of quotes before, like the constant's the only change. Uncertainty is another form of constant. Right. And so one thematic is really helping clients focus on what is certain, right? Yeah. What are the elements of their business that they do have to work on, their workforce. Right now it's an interesting time, and that's also in a trend is workforces are multiple generations, right? There's still some folks that are maybe the straggling boomers that are just about retiring. Yeah. There's sort of the millennials, that's the next wave, and so on and so forth. And then when you have that many different types of workforce, different working styles, different adaptation to work-life balances, technology exposure. There's a lot of interesting things.
Right.
And I don't think that's, it's a negative. It's
Yeah.
just, it's a trend that's going on or reality that businesses face. And it does introduce some complexity.
Right.
So one thematic is no matter what we do and what technology we implement is helping business just keep things simple.
Right.
As simple as they can be,
Yeah.
and creating clarity.
Yeah.
Because out of that clarity, if we can remove the noise, they can focus on innovating.
Yeah.
They can focus on doing something that's core to their business versus
Yeah.
getting stuck in, say, administrative
Yeah.
or not a core competency, right?
Yeah.
And then nothing, in my, I guess now like 17 plus years in IT career, two things that haven't changed. It's
Yeah.
always, when you're talking to the business, it's always about two things.
Yeah.
Either helping them grow revenue, which happens by better serving their clients,
Right.
better innovating on products,
Absolutely.
or things like that, or cost savings, right? Which tend to happen with optimizing efficient use of resources,
Yeah.
whichever may that be. And so I kind of focus on those themes.
Yeah.
And then there's a lot of buzzwords and trends that keep kind of surrounding that
Yes.
obviously have to be factored in.
Right. Right.
Right.
Yeah, absolutely. That makes sense. And what I infer from what you did mention is businesses are trying to transform their business post-COVID, right? And the current hot topic right now is agentic AI. Agentic systems are able to plan, reason, and act beyond, and work autonomously beyond extended periods, right? And how do you see agentic AI or Gen AI transform business operations, particularly in the realm of enterprise consulting?
Yeah, for consulting, it's a pretty exciting time. So Agentic AI, with the advent of Agentic AI, or more readily available, I think there's a couple of other things, right? Businesses have been transforming from the era of paper to more digital. So that
Yeah.
was first the digital transformation.
Right.
Hand in hand with business transformation, because ideally you were doing digital transformation to enable your business to do more.
Yeah.
And then that kind of was on the back of cloud.
Yeah.
And as cloud computing has improved, traditional AI has always been there. That's
Yeah.
about 10 plus years.
Yeah.
But then generative AI came around 2022, right? So making it even easier and democratizing and making it really, making AI really a commodity, right? Now anyone can use it. You don't need to have data science teams, etc.
Yeah.
Then comes in agentic AI. So for enterprise consulting, and at least what our day has been a lot about, is it is a lot of not just building agents, right,
Yeah.
but also implementing them, and then hand in hand working with the organizations and clients really to see how do we help their workforce evolve and
Right.
be trained to work with these agents, right?
Right.
So, and again, this is a lot of the buzz, but the reality is you do have to change the way you work.
Yeah.
I'll give you a very rudimentary example. Before calculators, there was a certain way, or before even smartphones, right?
Yeah,
Let's
yeah.
go more recent. Maybe calculators is a little
Yeah.
too old. Before phones came along, or smartphones, how many people used to kind of memorize phone numbers?
Yeah.
I actually, in my brain, have numbers that I have memorized,
Yeah.
and then the years I started using smartphones, I stopped memorizing them.
I can
right?
resonate with
And it was
that,
like
yeah.
a brain switch. So the same is true with AI. Is we need to really use it and
Right.
not be afraid of it,
Yeah.
and then learn how are we going to morph the way we work with it.
Right.
And we do have to be careful, or at least cognizant, to not let it mindlessly work.
Right.
The goal is AI and agents now are supposed to elevate our productivity,
Yeah.
help us do better strategic, complex thinking.
Yeah.
Well, you have to do that with a grain of salt, because the balance is not to over rely and allow yourself to do more
Yeah.
of those strategic things. And for folks that are students still, maybe they're still studying, what I would say is, I'm not against using AI. Use AI in your work. Make sure you critique it.
Right.
Make sure you look at what AI produces and what is your criteria or framework or fundamentals that you gained
Yeah.
in school, maybe in the earlier years, that you're using to assess if that output is appropriate or not.
Yeah.
Because that is flexing or exercising your strategic thinking muscle and your critical thinking muscle.
Yeah.
And that's absolutely critical as you continue to work.
Yeah.
But I think that's some of the agentic AI, right? And the biggest thing with clients then is in the consulting world is also finding the appropriate use cases.
Yeah.
And then let's say the use cases are handled, the right things are happening there, then the next step is how to implement it at scale. So those are sort of clients are at different maturity journey in their adoption of agentic AI, because a lot of them were still sort of focused on generative AI, and this is just the next step.
Right.
But it's an iterative cycle, so we continue to kind of work with clients no matter where they are in their journey.
Right. Yeah, those are some great insights. And you touched on something important here, AI adoption, right? And to your conversation, a lot of organizations are harnessing the power of both data and AI. But the pace of AI adoption can vary widely across industries. From your perspective, in your experience, what are some of the biggest or the hardest roadblocks for Canadian companies to adopt AI?
Right. I think for AI adoption, I don't think there's anything specific in Canada, although there's some of the talks and thematics that I've been attending or talking to in industry. There's a lot of talk about, is Canada risk averse? And I would say, hey, in the last 2 years, I've come across a lot of clients that have, quite well experimented with AI or generative AI. The amount of POCs, MVPs, minimum viable products, or proof of concepts that we've been engaged in with clients, I'm not necessarily seeing that they're risk averse. They are giving it a try. I'm in fact proud to say a lot of people understood or went in with the mindset that you could fail fast, you could fail. I would say maybe some of the challenges with AI adoption is the ROI, right? And perhaps that's rooted in sometimes, and this is sort of the good and the bad, like when you experiment really fast, you just go, but perhaps your organizational AI strategy was not set yet. So the adoption challenges are more that, some of the companies I've worked with is their client, some of their workforce wants to go faster with AI. They're like, turn it on, make it available to us, whether it's developers that want to use AI for coding, whether it's, somebody else that wants to use it just for daily productivity, simple knowledge worker, it doesn't really matter. So the adoption is coming in waves, and then you do have a set of workforce that's just afraid and said, I don't want to use it. I'm used to doing it the way I'm used to doing it. So I think what you have is a multi-skill level and probably an AI literacy issue. The second one I would say is it's not about just teaching the workforce on how to work with AI, but also AI governance. So companies are a little bit overwhelmed or sterilized, if you will, with, oh no, we don't want to be the next PR headline to AI. But even that, I would say, when we speak to organizations, we say, like, look, one, you have to do AI governance from the get-go. And two, it's, expect some room, because you're going to fail fast and it is experimentation, have some room for improvements. You're not going to have all angles of governance and compliance and regulations and everything just sort out the first way. You have a good starting point, and then build on that.
Got it. Yeah, makes sense. And you did mention something about data governance, right? I think as we scale up in AI in our daily operations, there's always a risk attached to it, and then you have to make sure there's data governance, which hasn't been in the past, right? And I want to. This naturally leads to my next question around responsible AI. We hear a lot of definitions around it. From your perspective, what does it truly mean?
Sure. I think look at the very simple terms. Responsible AI or responsible technology, I'll say, is just generally responsible use of technology, making sure it is in the context of AI, making you productive, has a positive impact on the folks, whether it's users or who it's going to serve, right? There are a lot of definitions. If anyone wants to kind of go into search and type Microsoft's AI principles or IBM's AI principles, everybody's got their 6 or 9, and they're all generally rooted around accountability, fairness, use of transparency, security, like how will the data be used? How is it computing the outputs that it's creating? So those are sort of the facets of it. And then there are regulations. What I would say is responsible AI was probably around a really long time. In fact, I recall in 2019 or 2020, I was working at Microsoft, and they rolled out an employee awareness training on what are the principles of AI at Microsoft. Similarly, at IBM Consulting, they have a data alliance with academia, other industry partners to really kind of focus on quality of data. I know you mentioned the term data governance as well, but there's two aspects. AI governance is just further
Right.
building up. But at the end of the day, the governance is basically how do you ensure that you reinforce, measure, and responsibly use the technology. And another simple analogy, if I will, is when cars came about, right? The technology was the car, but the governance or the guardrails were, okay, now at what age is one going to be allowed to operate the car? You know, what are the driving directions and other rules and regulations? And then ensuring that everybody is educated on that, which is us going for like the driving test or whatever, right? And then the second step is how is that reinforced, whether that's, you know, tickets through police officers or whatever it be, but it is the guardrails. And can that technology still be misused? Can you have somebody, you know, drinking and driving or misusing a vehicle? Absolutely. So I think of it as no different in terms of responsibility of AI or any technology. It's really the same to me.
Right. Absolutely, that makes sense. I think every organization who's kind of scaling their internal operations with AI definitely has to have a segment on responsible AI for data privacy, data governance. As you've been seeing a lot of chatbots, misinterpreting what they are supposed to initially infer from the original text, right? So I think that's a very crucial aspect, and we'll be seeing more of them as we scale up in the next 5 years or so. And you definitely did touch base on ROI, right? Which is one of the hardest parts for you probably when you have to justify your clients what the ROI is going to be looking like. And I wanted to understand, like, how do you personally help your clients justify the ROI when it comes to investing in AI, especially beyond functions like technology, customer service, or IT?
Right. There's one, we'll kind of handle this question two ways.
Right.
In terms of the actual getting business value out of AI, the use of AI, we kind of look at, there was IBV or IBM's research arm did studies of folks that were already doing traditional AI and now generative AI as well. And what we found is that clients that were able to get the most out of their AI, whether it's generative or not, we're kind of mature on 6 type of practices. So one is their strategy and vision around AI use was really strong. So this isn't it looks shiny and cool, let's go spin it up, but there's a concrete strategy. And so a simple example could be the organization either decides, hey, any AI project or use case that we come up with must contribute to the bottom line, right? It must be adding to our revenue or it must be reducing costs. I'm kind of giving a very simplified one. Another one could be, any AI projects we delve into must enhance our customer experience. What that does is if someone has a use case that says, well, this makes me more productive because it can help me do XYZ faster, but it doesn't really tie into anything that's a customer experience function, maybe it's an internal HR or finance case, while it's extremely exciting and cost savings and all of that, if the strategy says, no, all use cases must be client serving, then you quickly kind of kill that use case. So the next quick follow on to that is prioritization of use cases, right? Because like I said, there's like a volume and massive input of things companies can do. So how do you prioritize the right one so that it maps to the strategy you've set in place? The next set of like ways to kind of get real value are actually just putting some frameworks and reusables in place. As you start scaling and doing more AI use cases, you realize, wow, there are data fundamentals, like the way I set up my data engineering or the way I connect my data sources, or you realize actually I cannot get the best value out of my AI because the data isn't talking to each other, or I'm not able to gather insights. And that's like a general analytics problem before you can even kind of do generative AI and talk to your data. Absolutely. So those are sort of some fundamentals as well that end up being a barrier, or if you're doing it well, end up being the reason why you get better value for your AI experiments. Next one is sort of, AI operations. So what you'll see is, okay, there is a way to do, do we have to train data? How do we augment the large language models that are available and sift through our enterprise data through it, or do some augmentation? You don't really have to kind of look at considerable training anymore. You definitely don't. Some clients kind of ask me, Noureen, do we have to build our own large language model? And I'm going, for the average use case, no, really not, unless you're just doing something really specialized and you have years worth of data that requires that. That is not a standard sort of use case. I think the one I've read in the news is Walmart looking to kind of build their own large language models, but it's not something that any given organization is doing. And then as you kind of continue down that, talent and skilling is extremely important as well, because that's about making sure that folks are able to utilize, now AI is available in SaaS products, and I know there's running jokes that everybody is saying we sell AI and has it, but companies have rolled it out really fast. And so you could buy the license or have it turned on as a feature, but your workforce or whoever it's available for may not even know that the AI is being turned on. So I think the other thing is adoption as well, like ensuring you have the right talent and skill sets. And this isn't about, well, we're going to get rid of everybody who doesn't know AI and just hire a bunch of new AI people. It's about retraining and taking people along on that journey, and then making sure that they're getting use and they're adopting. And I won't kind of bore you with the typical adoption cycle, but you generally find champions, and then you percolate your change, and those champions lead and get everybody else excited, and you start getting, driving better adoption. So you kind of go through that regular cycle as well. So I think operational efficiency, AI ops, technology, and just kind of building then your reusable code base of your use cases as well, and your starting point. I think if you start doing these 5-6 things well, you will be able to achieve good value for your business out of the AI projects you experiment. And you'll still have some that will stop in that journey somewhere and never make it to production.
Right. And one beautiful thing that you mentioned was about having to work with a lot of AI use cases, especially at a large organization, right? So I want to shift gears and focus on that part, and want to understand, when you're leading AI strategy at scale, it's not small. It's no small feat, right? Especially at a large organization where there are a lot of moving parts, legacy systems, stakeholders. What challenges do you personally occur when leading AI strategy in such a large organization like IBM or even at Microsoft Canada? What are some of the challenges that you personally face, and how do you navigate through those challenges?
Yeah, I think the biggest one really has been adoption. Just kind of starting off with her. And for this one, I'll reflect on IBM Consulting's own journey. We have been reimagining and transforming how we do consulting, and use AI to enhance consulting, deliver better outcomes. So if you think about the traditional world, it was more sort of opinion led. Like, a consultant comes in, gives their opinion, and it's a race for who has the best consultant and the best sort of leadership. But now it's focused on an outcome. The client expects this outcome, and so we're going to focus on that more repeatable sort of, you could argue, well, no, we want the specialized thing. We don't want the repeatable IP and assets, but the IP and assets also drive optimization on how we deliver that work. Of course, everybody has their custom environment specifics, and so you do kind of configure it, but what you're able to do is, I'll give you a quick example. We have IBM Consulting Associates that through the use of AI are able to mock up some demos for us in a matter of days. Our traditional environment set up and getting an environment ready, getting the client specs into a demo environment, and while it was still not really in their environment, but sort of a proof of concept, would be like a couple of weeks. Well, we're able to now shrink that down to days, right? And so that's just one simple example in sort of the pre-sale cycle. The same is true actually in the project delivery as well, through the use of automation, which has always been there, right? And further now AI assistants, AI personas, and things like that, we're able to optimize the consulting delivery to the end client as well.
Right, absolutely. And the next one is one of my favorite topics, and I know you work in this space. It's about quantum computing. I know we heard a lot of buzz around quantum computing. What are some of the use cases that excite you the most in the realm of enterprise consulting?
I would say for consulting, the focus around quantum right now is security and safety for clients. It's still a little buzzy in terms of the actual use cases and what I'm going to be able to help clients do. So unfortunately, I don't have that exciting update yet. But what I would say is really the focus is, because quantum computing can break cryptographic algorithms set up by even blockchains. It has the power to do so. So a lot of it is making sure organizations are quantum safe, i.e. can quantum computing be used against an organization? So it's kind of inverse. You're like, okay, we're not running after the innovation just yet, but we're kind of safeguarding. But unfortunately, with any technology, misuse is always top of mind for folks, just like we talked about responsible AI and things as well. So it's sort of the same right now. but the security, safety, privacy aspects, and then also there is elements of with blockchain, for instance, mining and things like that. There is an element of quantum computing can actually improve and help that be further enhanced. So that's sort of exciting, but I don't think we're there yet with clients.
Correct. Makes sense. I think that's absolutely spot on. And the next question I wanted to ask on behalf of our listeners, budding entrepreneurs out there, or individuals with small businesses who want to build something in AI, but they don't have the resources for it. Where do you think they should start their journey? Should they be focusing on a solid data foundation model, or on the right use case like you mentioned earlier, or is it something entirely different?
Out of personal interest, I follow a lot of young entrepreneurs, often speak to students like yourself and master folks and young entrepreneurs. And I would say, actually, if you want to do AI, it has nothing to do with AI. It's just the fundamentals of probably entrepreneurship, which I will claim not to know much about because I've kind of grown up in corporate life. But here's what I've observed, which is, as an entrepreneur or anybody, even working in an organization, coming up with a new idea in the corporate world, you have to kind of go to the basics of what am I building? Who is it for? How are they going to use it? How useful is it going to be? Why? How do I know it'll be useful to them? And almost kind of go through those layers of like 5 deep layers of why underneath. Because it could be exciting. And you can get overwhelmed on, okay, well, I got to build this data model and that data model, and you build the most beautiful product. But if you don't have users, or you do not have appropriate valuation, because sometimes that happens, we've seen in some entrepreneurial companies, they build it ahead of its time. Like people aren't ready for it, right? Or it could happen that people, again, don't have the literacy to be able to utilize and benefit from it. So it might seem counterintuitive, but what I would say is, rather than focusing on building an AI company, kind of focus on what is it that you're looking to solve for. I think the other day on LinkedIn, I came across a young fella who worked in his family, and his family does appraisals for properties. Real estate is very hot topic in Toronto, so we'll talk about that for a second. And because he had been watching his family forever do appraisals, and the process it takes a number of days or whatever, he formulated an agentic AI solution to collapse that into like minutes or something like that. He kind of joked that I just killed my family's long business. But that's the kind of thing, right? Like, he found something that has an application and a value, and I think the top appraiser companies in Toronto kind of bid, or in Canada kind of bid for his business. But the point is, he didn't focus on I had to build AI. He actually focused on what problem in society, community can I help solve for, and who am I solving this for? And that would be my advice to anybody that's looking to build an AI business, is focus on the business element.
Right. I think that's a great insight, and thank you for sharing that example. I think focusing on the problem, what are you going to do about it, is the main element of starting any company, right? And I wanted to get your thoughts around this. There's so many schools of thought when it comes to the future of technology, especially AI, right? And one perspective is that AI is a way that can amplify human ingenuity and creativity, act as a tool that can empower us. Right. But on the flip side, there's a cautious view that most of humans do, that it can replace most of the jobs that currently humans can do. Personally, I do believe it can act as a tool that can bring out the best in us if used right? But one thing I think we can all agree to the fact is that the skills required for the future are going to be completely different. So when it comes to hiring new talent or promoting new leaders, what are some skill sets that you look in an individual?
Yeah, the big ones for me are adaptability. When someone shows adaptability in their attitude, and I mean, whether AI was around or not, I felt like that was a thing in technology that happens, right? Everything keeps changing. So, and there's a concept by Carol Dweck, which is fixed mindset versus growth mindset. So really, when I'm interviewing new talent, I'm looking for growth mindset. I'm not looking for followers, but leaders. And no, you do not need to have people reporting to you to be a leader. A leader is somebody that has a point of view, kind of shares their educated points or arguments, right? And is open to listening to the ideas of others, and molding and bringing them into their own idea and kind of collaborating and bringing new ideas forward. So adaptability, flexibility, critical thinking. I cannot emphasize enough. The last thing I need is if I've got tons of AI agents running around doing things, I don't need a human acting as an AI agent for me, right? Their level of reasoning and thinking has to be beyond the reasoning and thinking an AI agent can now bring along. So it is really that critical thinking. And I would say that's the one skill to emphasize for anybody who's using AI in their school. Great, but get into the habit of critiquing it. I'll share a funny example. When Google Maps first came around, they would always kind of give me like, this is how long it's going to take you to drive to this spot. I would turn on the map and then somehow use my own mapped way to get there, because I remember my ways around Toronto if it's a familiar street or area, and I was like, let me see if I can beat the time it's predicting, because I don't like the way it's telling me to go, and I don't know what it's using toll charges or not, or fuel efficient way. I'm gonna kind of go my way. Anyways, over time, I've kind of learned to either trust it or be skeptical, depending on the route it provides to me. But keep that thinking up, however you exercise it.
Right. I think that's a great anecdote. Thank you for sharing. And and to your point, right, you did mention that there's so many emerging technologies almost every day. New tools, new skill set, new news, and it becomes a bit overwhelming to keep up. How do you personally stay on top of these trends?
There's a couple of things. One, I cannot emphasize enough that learning is a constant. So as a tech professional, I'm fortunate to have companies that encourage and create space. That happened at Microsoft. It's happening at IBM. There's hackathons that happen. There's learning hours that happen. There's, funding that's provided to go get certified. And so, and at the end of the day, we can debate all day long whether certifications are necessary or not, or add like little badges to your LinkedIn. If that motivates you, great. If it doesn't, for me, the motivator is, whether I get the badge or not, but now that's an excuse to go learn something. Because when I learn it, I'll get the pretty badge and I'll check off a training I needed to complete, but it's the action of actually learning and doing. So I constantly try to kind of do regular learning modules using our internal learning curricula, and also what keeps releasing. The second thing I do is sometimes I'll challenge myself and go write LinkedIn articles. And in order to write an article or speak about something, even like this session today, you have to kind of know that topic and go learn it. So that's another way. So try to teach it or to speak to it, you have to learn it. The third one is I actually do a lot of LinkedIn learning. And so I have sort of regular followings to try to figure out who I want to follow, who's sort of releasing the status. But every once in a while I do turn it off. I'm like, okay, I'm at a point where I need to ingest and sit on a little bit what I've learned versus kind of, the next model is out. This is out. Like, I do not need to know. So you need to have your balance on what you need to know. And for me, knowing the latest thing that dropped yesterday is not as important as understanding what's out there in the market, and specifically in the context of enterprise consulting, what's usable for my clients, or when they're going to try to utilize it, what are the challenges and roadblocks that I'm going to help ease so that they're able to utilize and get business value, right? So I kind of use that as my focus filter on, do I need to be always latest, greatest, or do I need to be what's implementable and usable? And then lastly, I would say, in addition to articles, I do try to kind of subscribe to, there's a great Canadian paper. It has like a daily sort of summary of like tech and macroeconomics happening, called The Peak. There's Flipboard, Tech Briefings. So there's a couple of those websites, sort of RSS feeds, that kind of provide you daily up-to-dates or top headlines. And I do try to kind of quickly scan them to see if there's anything that catches my eye to dig deeper into, right? Yeah. If it falls through my filter, it's like, that is a topic I do care more about. Let me click in a bit more.
Yeah, I think those are some great insights. And I think the main essential part during this time is all about upskilling, right? Just finding ways to upskill yourself. And that's the way it's going to be for the rest of our job times, lifetimes at least. And you graduated from the University of Waterloo, right? And for all the students out there, for all the listeners out there, what is something that you would, if you had given a chance to go back in time, what would you do something differently during your academic journey?
I did do some business courses. You're talking about maybe more sports. I would, I would have enjoyed. I think the working hazard of the tech life is you're sitting many hours a day, and you can invest in a standing desk and feel good about it. And I don't know if that's helping, right? So I think actually what I would say to the up and coming tech world, and everybody's going to do tech somehow, is find ways to be more active alongside, because we all have great value and work to do, but our health is not tradable. So I would say find ways to be active now, cultivate that, nurture that interest now, and don't let it go through your working life.
Wow, that's balance is the key then, right?
Yes.
And before we wrap up, any podcast or any article or any book that you would like to recommend to our listeners that inspired you personally, or you think that more people should be exploring?
For sure. I'm a huge fan of research. So in my earlier life, I used to read a lot of Gartner research. And they do tend to have a lot of publicly available publications if you don't want to be a paid subscriber. If you're within an organization, I don't know, the academia might have paid subscriptions to Gartner and things like that, Gartner, Forrester. I like the analyst reviews because it's a third party, and sometimes it is a perspective that's different than the tech company's own sort of point of view and perspective on what their products and capabilities and solutions and possibilities are. And then they also do sort of industry trends. On the similar line, IBM, I was really kind of pleased to find out in my last 2 years, has a whole research arm. So like a Gartner, Forrester research, IBM within company has it as well. It's called IBV. And so and the topic that we've been kind of talking about too, I would recommend to our listeners would be, go check out, it's called the CEO's Guide to Generative AI.
Yeah.
It's not only for a CEO. Any leader or adopter of AI could listen to it, and it has really good insights that are backed by research and responses from all over the world, including Canada and working force and leaders on what is a challenge, barrier, some of the things that we talked about. You're going to get to go like hundreds of level depth into that. The other one I would say for anybody who's interested in careers in consulting, we also on the IBV website have a consulting reimagined by AI research article and paper, and that one might be another one that could give you that compare and contrast on what consulting used to be, and maybe what we've grown up thinking consulting is, and what consulting is transforming to be. And those two things hopefully are helpful for folks as they look at their next career step.
Got it. Awesome. Well, Noureen, it's been an absolute pleasure hosting you. On behalf of the Business Technology Club, I want to sincerely thank you for coming here all the way till here and taking your time to share your insights. We really hope that our listeners are able to walk away with some great takeaways. We touched base on so many areas. But yes, until next time, thank you for tuning into Grey Matter and Code.
Thank you.